Hi guys, what's up? My name is David and welcome back to my channel. So, I am so excited to be making this video. I love this topic. So, I made a video about Viking symbols that are not actually Viking a while ago, and some of you have been asking in the comments for me to make a video about symbols that are actually Viking. And of course, there is a lot of art available from the Viking Age, from archaeological records and stuff. So, just going through that and picking out every single symbol would probably take a lot of work and would, to be honest, be kind of boring. So instead, what I decided to do was go to Pinterest, type in Viking symbols, choose the first overview post I could find, and then go through these symbols and tell you guys which ones are actually historically accurate Viking Age symbols. So before I show you this image, I just want to make sure that you guys understand what I mean by the term Viking symbols. The term Viking refers to people who traveled from Scandinavia to places like England, the Faroe Islands, Iceland, but also other places in continental Europe, with the goal of plundering and raiding and stuff like that. However, the term Viking Age is used for the entire time period from the 8th century to the 11th century. So any arts that can be dated to that time period that has been made either in Scandinavia or in places that were under Scandinavian influence at the time, I would consider Viking Age symbols / art. So this is the image that is the first kind of overview post you get from Pinterest when you type in Viking symbols. Now, I have good news and bad news about this post. First of all, there's so much wrong with this. Starting with the title, it says Viking symbols and its meanings, which of course should be Viking symbols and their meanings because it's plural, but okay. And then so many of these symbols are not Viking at all. So the bad news is, realistically, only 2 of these are actually historically accurate Viking Age symbols. But the slightly better news is that although many of these designs shown here are modern, they are inspired by symbols that actually do come from the Viking Age, and I also want to include these in the video and show you which symbols could replace them as really Viking. So some of these I have already mentioned in my previous video about Viking symbols that are not Viking, so I'm not going to talk that much about them, and I'm also not going to go into detail when it comes to other symbols on this list that are not Viking at all. If you want, I can make a whole part 2 video about the Viking symbols that are not Viking, because there are a lot of those available on the internet. So first, let me start by removing all the symbols that are totally not Viking and modern inventions. We are left with this. Now, this is still okay, right? But now I'm going to remove all the symbols that technically have Viking Age origins, but the designs here are modern. We are left with 2 symbols. Wow! So I am going to go through all of them. So the first one of these that is accurate, which I have already mentioned in my previous video, is the Valknut, here also called the Knot of the Slain. The word and the interpretations have been added after the Viking Age, but the actual symbol has been found on objects from the Viking Age, such as picture stones from Gotland, Sweden, as you can see here. I have shown this exact image in my previous video. So yeah, this one, actually Viking, gets it guys. Woo. Now the second one that is actually Viking is this particular raven symbol. Now, of course, ravens are very, very common when it comes to Viking Age symbolism and Viking Age mythology. Odin is supposed to have had these 2 ravens, mind and memory, so Hugin and Munin, and a lot of bird symbolism from the Viking Age is interpreted as ravens because that is a logical assumption people make. There's tons of jewelry shaped as birds, some depictions of horned helmets actually could represent two ravens, although this particular image is from before the Viking Age, so it's also not Viking. But this particular symbol comes from the so-called raven penny, which is a coin minted by King Olaf Gudfridsson of York in England. And you might think, okay, but York is not Scandinavia. Well, at this time where this coin was minted, somewhere between 939 and 941, York was actually under Viking influence, which means that this raven is a real Viking symbol. Yay! Now, we've had these two symbols that are really historically accurate depictions of Viking Age symbols. Now, let's go on to the rest, just following this image from top to bottom. So the first one we meet is the Mjolnir, Thor's hammer. And of course, the Thor's hammer is a real Viking Age symbol. There is tons of archaeological evidence for this, but obviously this design right here is not a Viking Age design. Seems to be inspired by Celtic knotwork, and of course the Vikings and the Celts had a lot of cultural exchange, but still this particular style would not be considered Viking. And actually, funny thing, Mjolnir pendants are now usually worn by men, but when it comes to the archaeological record, most Mjolnir pendants are actually found in graves that are assumed to be female graves. So, this whole meme of Thor being the god of lesbians, not that far off from the truth. And although you cannot really be sure what a symbol means, and there was some scholarly debate whether these pendants were actually supposed to represent hammers, until there was one found with a runic inscription that said, "I am a hammer." Well, mystery solved. So yeah, this one gets an approval stamp, it's Viking, just not this particular design. Now the next one is the Yggdrasil, here also called the Tree of Life. Now, again, as with the previous symbol, technically, yes, Yggdrasil is a thing from the Viking Age. The tree is very important when it comes to Old Norse mythology. It's supposed to be the thing that, holds all the worlds together. But this particular design, again, is not historically accurate, is not Viking, clearly inspired by Celtic knotwork, and has modern origins. When it comes to these symbols, a lot of them are inspired by the revival of neo-paganism in the 19th, 20th, 21st centuries. So all these artworks are, yeah, sure, inspired by real finds, but they are still modern. But that doesn't mean there are no depictions of Yggdrasil at all. There is a tapestry called the Överhogdal tapestry from Sweden, which has the symbol that might represent Yggdrasil. So if you are looking for a symbol that represents Yggdrasil but is more historically accurate, then yeah, this one, we're not entirely sure if it really is Yggdrasil, but at least this one comes from the Viking Age. So yeah, again, stamp of approval. Yeah, technically Viking, but not this one. Okay, the next one I have already talked about in my previous video. The symbol is not even shown on this graph. It doesn't show the one. First of all, the Vegvisir is not Viking, and it's also not a compass. So no, if you want more information about this one, go watch the other video, and do not have time to go into this again. The same for the next one, the Eishjelmer, although there is some reference to a helm of awe within Old Norse source material, this particular symbol does not come up before the 1670s. So again, not a Viking symbol, sorry. Now the next one, the Troll Cross, again, not a Viking symbol. So this one is actually also a modern invention made by a smith in Sweden who said that he was inspired by a sign he found on a house that was supposed to be this ancient protection symbol, but it's still not Viking. The next one, this wolf. Now, again, obviously, this particular design is not authentically Viking at all. This is a modern rendition. And by the way, this does not make it any less cool or anything. I really enjoy this artwork. I used to have a pendant with a wolf inspired by this thing, but I never thought of it as authentically Viking. Although wolves do have a central position when it comes to Viking Age mythology, like for example the wolf Fenrir that is supposed to eat the sun at Ragnarok and is a child of Loki. And then Odin also has two wolves, Giri and Freki. So wolf imagery is present in Viking Age art and Viking Age mythology, just not this one. So stamp of approval, technically Viking, but not this one. Now, the next one, the dragon or serpent. Again, like many of these, this particular design is modern. However, dragons or serpents play a crucial role in Viking Age mythology and can be found on many depictions. So, of course, another child of Loki, Jormungandr, the world serpent, is supposed to lay in the sea around Midgard, which is the place where the humans are supposed to live according to Old Norse mythology. And Thor at some point goes fishing and fishes up this serpent, which is depicted on runestones like this one. And of course, serpents are also shown on other types of imagery, like, for example, ship carvings, the Viking ships that are called drakkar, which means, dragon vessel. So, yeah, dragons or serpents, the terms are basically used interchangeably when it comes to Viking Age stuff, are very prominent. Even the basic runestone design often features runes that are written inside of a dragon or a serpent body. So yeah, this one again, this particular design not Viking, but dragons and serpents, yes, Viking Age. The next one, very disappointing. No, this one is not Viking at all. This is a modern invention. Once again, it does not mean that it's not cool, but it is a modern symbol. Although it is supposed to represent the fate, the web of words that is supposed to be spun by the Norns. The concept of fate is very important in Viking Age mythology, but yeah, this particular symbol, not Viking. Now, the bear. This one is also not Viking at all. This one, again, clearly inspired by Celtic knotwork. And although there is some mention of bears and bear symbolism in Viking material, like for example berserkers, people who are supposed to dress up as bears and go berserk into battle, and how accurate that is, like what exactly that meant, is also not entirely sure. But there are no like bear symbols from the Viking Age. Of course, in countries where there were bears, usually bears were quite an important thing, but not as important in Old Norse mythology as, for example, in Finnish or Sami religion, where the bear had a much more central role. So yeah, this one, not Viking. Then the next one, the triquetra. This one is not Viking, it's Celtic, although it has probably been used in the same time period as the Viking Age. It does not have Scandinavian origin, which means that it is not Viking. And, there is a lot of cultural influences between Celtic and Norse art, resulting in this Hiberno-Norse style, but still, this triquetra or Celtic knot is not the Viking symbol. Now, the boar. Maybe surprisingly, but this one is actually pretty much authentic. Again, this symbol is a modern rendition, but boars do play a role in Old Norse mythology, especially associated with the god Freyr. There is a prominent boar in the Old Norse mythology called Gullinbursti, which means golden breast, I think. And also the Orkney Islands, which were under Scandinavian influence from quite some time, get their name from islands of the wild boar from Gaelic, but the word Orkney with AE at the end is Scandinavian. So yeah, boars are also pretty important in Viking Age mythology. Now this one. It's funny that this image says legged horse because yeah, no shit, horses have legs, but I am going to assume they mean eight-legged horse, which yeah is Odin's horse, Sleipnir. Again, a child of Loki. Loki used to fuck around with anything and anyone. But yeah, this eight-legged horse is of course mentioned in the Poetic and the Prose Edda in connection to Odin, and there are some depictions of this horse, such as on the Överhogdal tapestry that I mentioned before, and also on the Shengvi, the runestone from Gotland. I actually have this design on a shirt. It's very nice. So yeah, the eight-legged horse or Sleipnir is a real symbol from the Viking Age and Viking Age mythology. Okay, we are almost done, just a few more to go. So this one is kind of weird because, yeah, of course, the Viking axe is authentic. Vikings used axes, yeah, but I wouldn't call it a symbol. It's just like a thing that a weapon that was used in the Viking Age. And of course, again, this particular design is modern, but when there are some depictions of people on runestones, for example, they do sometimes feature axes. So yeah, this one is also authentic. Obviously, people used axes in the Viking Age. Now, the next one, Gungir or Odin's spear. Although this design, again, is very modern, this spear is found in Old Norse mythology, mentioned in the Prose and the Poetic Edda, and when there are some depictions of someone that is thought to represent Odin, it usually has a spear, like the one on the Bugsta runestone. Although, as you can see, the horse here does not have 8 legs, so whether this is Sleipnir and Odin is like questionable, but still, he has a spear. And there are also earlier depictions from before the Viking Age that are so called spear dancers, which are also thought to represent Odin, perhaps. And yeah, they obviously, as the name implies, have a spear. So yeah, this one, not Viking Age design, but the idea is Viking. Now, the longship or Viking ships. Well, obviously, again, this design is modern, but Viking ships have been like probably the most important feature of the Viking Age. Without the transportation overseas, the Viking Age would not have been possible, and we would not have known about the Vikings as much as we do now. So yeah, the Viking Age ships are very important in the Viking Age. Again, I wouldn't call it like a symbol because it's just a thing from the Viking Age, but there are depictions again on the Gotlandic picture stones, which are an amazing source of art and information. And from these Gotlandic picture stones, we can see how the sails looked like of these ships, because of course there are also just ships being found, buried as ship graves or found in the sea, but obviously the sail is not there anymore, so these picture stones can give us a glimpse of how they might have looked. So yeah, this one, again, not this design, but yeah, Viking ships obviously come from the Viking Age. And now, the last one, the Triskele, here called Horns of Odin. Oh my god, this name. Now, there's a great brand called Horns of Odin, and the guy that has this brand also has this great podcast called the Nordic Mythology Podcast, which I am a big fan of. I would recommend everyone to go listen to that if you like more information about the Viking Age and, you know, interviews with experts and stuff. But this symbol is not authentic. It is Celtic or even pre-Celtic, and again, it could be found in the same time period as the Viking Age. But that does not make it a Viking symbol because it is not Scandinavians who made it. Well, we have come to the end of this video. I hope you all managed to stick along to the end. I know this probably was a long one, but I just really wanted to go through this, and I want to like show you guys how easy it is to just like find information that is just incorrect. And of course, you don't have to like trust me. I'm just like an undergraduate student with a passion for the Viking Age. But you are always more than welcome to look these symbols up yourselves. And I must say, it's actually pretty hard to find the real information and the real origin of these symbols, because it's this idea that they are Viking is reproduced so many times that people just like start believing that they are Viking. Every time you type in Viking symbols in like Google and Pinterest, in whatever search engine or social media you're using, you're gonna get a lot of symbols that are just not Viking at all. And once again, as I've said in my previous video, I don't think there's anything wrong with using these symbols. I just think that if you want to use these symbols, whether you would like to get them tattooed or anything along these lines, just know the real origin and know that they are not actually Viking. And also remember that not everything has to be Viking in order to be cool. I have the Vegvisir along with like a whole tree tattooed on my arm, and I know that it is not Viking. I just got it tattooed because I like this tree, I drew it myself, and I like this symbol. So, but I know it's not Viking. And the same with this one, for example. This sun symbol is also often used as Viking, but this one is a Bronze Age symbol, and the Bronze Age was way before the Viking Age. So, also not a Viking symbol. And keep using these symbols as much as you want. But yeah, just know that most of them are not really as Viking as they claim to be. So yeah, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video because I love talking about topics like this. If you want a part 2 of symbols that are not Viking, if you want to know more about these symbols, feel free to tell me, ask me anything in the comments. And yeah, I hope you have a lovely weekend, rest of your week, whenever it is that you're watching this. So yeah, bye bye.